Everyone in the village laughed at her choice. She was beautiful, smart, and from a well-respected family. He was poor, humble, and had nothing to offer but quiet hands and honest eyes. They said she was throwing her life away. But no one knew. The man she loved held a secret so powerful it could change everything. This is a story of love, patience, courage, and a truth that could shake even the wealthiest of worlds. Before we continue, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Chioma Nadi was admired by everyone in her village. Tall, graceful, and radiant, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that drew people's attention without effort. Her smile was warm, her voice gentle, and her laughter contagious. When she walked through the village, children stopped to watch, neighbors whispered compliments, and even strangers felt a spark of curiosity. Yet despite the admiration, Chioma's heart was her own, and she had learned early that no one could decide for her whom she would love. When she announced that she was marrying Emeka, a poor farmer from the outskirts of the village, the news spread like wildfire. Whispers became conversations. Conversations became arguments. And arguments reached even the ears of the village elders. People shook their heads in disbelief. Friends begged her to reconsider. Cousins whispered warnings about ruined reputations. Even her family questioned her decision, their faces clouded with worry and confusion. "Chioma, are you certain?" her mother asked, her voice trembling. "Emeka has nothing. He cannot provide the life you deserve." "I love him," Chioma said firmly, her eyes shining with conviction. "His hands may be calloused, his pockets empty, but his heart is full. And that is more than enough." Her father sighed, torn between pride in his daughter and fear for her future. "I only wish you happiness, Chioma, but this path will not be easy." Emeka, a black African man of quiet strength, stood beside her with a calm smile. His dark skin glistened under the morning sun, and his eyes held a depth of patience that few could understand. He didn't have wealth, fame, or the kind of influence that commanded respect at the village council. What he had was something far rarer: integrity, humility, and a steadfast heart. He had kept a secret, one he had hidden even from Chioma, but it was not yet the time to reveal it. For now, he simply held her hand, letting her voice and spirit speak louder than any judgment or doubt. As the day of the wedding arrived, the village buzzed with curiosity. Decorations were simple, yet beautiful. Strings of colorful fabric hung between the mango trees, small flowers lined the path, and the scent of fresh earth and blooming jasmine filled the air. Villagers gathered, some with expressions of doubt, others with hope. Under the largest mango tree on Emeka's small family farm, Chioma and Emeka exchanged vows. The sun dipped low, casting a warm golden light across the scene. Birds sang softly, as if witnessing the union themselves. Chioma's dress was modest, flowing like the gentle river that ran past the farm. Emeka wore his best shirt, sleeves rolled up, hands still calloused from days in the soil, yet strong and steady. "I promise to love you in wealth and in poverty, in joy and in sorrow," Chioma whispered, her eyes locked on Emeka's. "And I promise to honor you, cherish you, and protect you with every ounce of my being," Emeka replied, his voice deep, calm, and unwavering. No one in the village realized that this was not just a marriage. It was the beginning of a journey that would challenge beliefs, break hearts, and ultimately reveal truths more extraordinary than anyone could imagine. As the final words were spoken, a soft wind rustled the mango leaves, carrying the promise of love, resilience, and a life that neither Chioma nor Emeka would ever forget. From that moment, their lives were intertwined, not just by vows but by destiny itself. Married life was nothing like Chioma had imagined. She had pictured the quiet mornings, shared laughter, and the simple joys of life with a man she loved. But the reality of living in Emeka's small, humble home tested her in ways she had never anticipated. The house was modest, a single-room dwelling made of clay bricks and a tin roof. It creaked under the slightest wind, groaned during heavy rains, and seemed to echo every worry that entered its walls. The nights were cold, and the mornings brought the scent of wet earth, damp wood, and the lingering aroma of meals that had been stretched to their simplest form. Money was scarce. Every decision required careful thought. Every purchase was measured against necessity. Even the smallest indulgences, a new set of plates, a fresh loaf of bread, a handful of sugar, felt like luxuries that had to be earned. At first, Chioma wondered if she had made a mistake. The village's whispers haunted her. What is she thinking? A life like this will break her. Why would a beautiful woman choose a poor man? She could have married a man who offers comfort, not hardship. Those words were painful, but what hurt more was the weight of doubt that occasionally crept into her own heart. Yet, as the days passed, Chioma began to notice something extraordinary. Every morning Emeka rose before sunrise. He walked through the fields, hands calloused and strong, tending to the crops with care and precision. He mended fences, repaired tools, and worked alongside hired laborers who treated him with respect, not fear. He never complained. Not once. Even when a heavy rain ruined half the harvest or when animals wandered into the crops. He faced the challenges with quiet resolve, never raising his voice, never blaming anyone else. Each evening, when Chioma returned from her chores or simple errands in the village, she would find him waiting, sometimes with a small smile, sometimes with a story from his day, sometimes simply sitting quietly under the mango tree, watching the sunset. He had a way of making her laugh, even when the days were long and the struggles felt endless. His humor was gentle, his jokes subtle, and his patience unyielding. He never let her doubt the love that had brought them together, even when the world seemed determined to test it. And slowly, Chioma began to understand a truth she had never fully grasped before. Wealth was not measured in gold or silver. It was measured in honesty, in kindness, and in the strength to love someone wholeheartedly, even when no one else could see the value of that love. Every meal they shared, every chore they completed together, every quiet conversation beneath the stars, taught her that happiness was found not in luxury, but in connection. Not in possessions, but in presence. Chioma began to respect Emeka more deeply than she had ever imagined possible. Not because he had riches or power, but because he had integrity, courage, and a heart capable of enduring hardship without complaint. In the humble creaks of the house, in the smell of wet earth and cooking fires, in the struggles of everyday life, Chioma discovered a kind of love richer than she had ever dreamed. A love that did not depend on wealth, fame, or approval from others. And as she lay beside him each night, listening to the gentle rhythm of his breathing, she realized that she was beginning to understand the true meaning of life, love, and partnership. She had married a poor man. But in that poverty, she found a treasure greater than any fortune. A treasure that no one could ever take away. Life on the farm had settled into a rhythm. Days were filled with toil and purpose. Nights were quiet and intimate. Yet, one evening, everything shifted, even if only slightly, when a stranger arrived. It was late afternoon, and the sun was dipping low behind the trees, casting long shadows across the farm. Chioma was tidying up the small courtyard when a sleek, unfamiliar car drove down the dusty path. A man stepped out, dressed in crisp clothing that contrasted sharply with the earth-stained farm and worn boots of the villagers. In his hands he carried an envelope, simple yet elegant. The handwriting was precise, flowing with care, as if each letter had been written with intention. The paper itself felt heavier than ordinary stationery, almost as if it carried weight beyond its size. He handed it directly to Emeka, who accepted it with quiet grace. There was no hesitation, no shock, and no outward sign that it contained something extraordinary. Chioma watched, curiosity sparking in her chest. She wanted to ask, to know, but her place, she reminded herself, was beside him, not prying into his affairs. Once the stranger left, Emeka walked into the small house with the envelope carefully held in his hands. He set it down, then glanced at Chioma with his usual gentle smile, a smile that reassured her, even as it made her curiosity grow. "Who is it from?" she asked, her voice soft, almost hesitant. Emeka's eyes met hers. "Just business," he replied, tucking the envelope away in a drawer. There was no further explanation. No hint. Chioma nodded, though her mind refused to quiet. Something about the envelope felt different. It wasn't just a letter. It was a signal of a hidden life, a secret Emeka had chosen not to share. That night, Chioma noticed other subtle changes around the house. A new well had been installed near the garden, its stonework precise and solid, unlike the usual rough constructions in the village. Tools in the barn were sharper, stronger, and clearly new. A few small gifts, an embroidered cloth, a polished wooden bowl, appeared in corners of the home where she had never noticed anything before. Each item was practical, yet exquisite. Each one whispered of resources that Emeka could not have earned through the farm alone. Chioma felt a swirl of emotions. Curiosity, awe, and a strange excitement mingled with worry. What if the man she had married, the humble, patient Emeka she had grown to love, was more than the quiet farmer she believed him to be? For the first time, she studied him with new eyes, noticing the way he carried himself, the subtle gestures that hinted at confidence born not from wealth, but from something deeper. Knowledge, perhaps, or experience beyond the boundaries of the village. Yet even as questions grew, Chioma felt a renewed sense of love for him. Whatever secrets he held, she realized, it did not diminish the man she had chosen, the man who had shown her patience, kindness, and unwavering integrity. And that night, as she lay beside him in the small, simple home, she made a silent promise to herself. Whatever truths were waiting to be revealed, she would face them with him. Because love, she knew, was not only about the known and the visible. It was about trust, courage, and the willingness to embrace the mysteries of another heart. Chioma drifted to sleep with a quiet sense of wonder. There was more to Emeka than she had ever imagined. And soon, she suspected, the world would find out too. Life on the farm continued quietly for a while. But rumors have a way of finding cracks in even the most humble walls. It began with whispers. Traders visiting the market noticed unusual wealth quietly flowing into the farm. A stranger saw the newly built well and asked questions. The small gifts, the polished tools, the subtle improvements, they did not go unnoticed. The villagers began to talk, first in hushed voices, then openly. "Have you seen the Nady farm lately?" someone asked at the market. "The well, the tools. I don't understand where he got the money." Others nodded, curiosity and suspicion mingling in their eyes. And Chioma? She has been smiling differently lately. Could it be? Chioma noticed the change before the rumors reached her ears. People looked at her differently. Sometimes with envy, sometimes with awe. Children who had once whispered behind her back now stared in fascination. Even the elders who had questioned her marriage paused when she walked by. Then came the day of revelation. A well-dressed man arrived in the village, carrying documents and letters that confirmed what no one had suspected. Emeka, the poor farmer, was heir to a hidden fortune. He had deliberately chosen a simple life, living among the soil, the crops, and the quiet rhythms of the village. He wanted to experience life without the weight of inherited wealth, to understand the struggles of ordinary people, and above all, to find a love that was genuine, not tied to his name or fortune. The news spread like wildfire. The very people who had mocked Chioma and Emeka now watched in awe. Mothers whispered to daughters, "She chose him for his heart, and it turns out he had everything hidden all along." Chioma walked proudly beside Emeka that day, feeling the eyes of the village upon them. But it was not pride in wealth that moved her heart. It was love, patience, and the quiet integrity that had carried them through hardship. She realized, with a deep and unshakable clarity, that love had been the test all along. The trials, the village gossip, the whispers of doubt, they were not meant to break her. They were meant to reveal the depth of her devotion and the strength of her choice. And Emeka had passed that test, not by revealing wealth, not by showing power or status, but by living with integrity, patience, and humility every single day. The villagers who had once laughed now bowed their heads in respect, understanding finally that true worth is not measured by possessions or status, but by the heart and character of a person. Chioma took Emeka's hand and squeezed it gently, feeling the pulse of a life that had been lived with honesty and love. She knew that, together, they had not just survived the trials, they had triumphed over them. And in that moment, standing under the shade of the mango trees, Chioma understood something she had always hoped for: that the love she had chosen, the man she had trusted, and the life she had embraced were worth far more than anything the world could offer. Because sometimes, the greatest victories are not about wealth, but about courage, patience, and hearts that refuse to waver. Life after the revelation was not merely about wealth. It was about purpose, transformation, and the quiet power of love. Emeka revealed his fortune, but not to impress, not to show off, and certainly not to feed the gossiping tongues of the village. His goal was simple: to uplift the community that had embraced him despite their judgment, and to honor the love that had stood steadfast through hardship. Together, Emeka and Chioma began small. They started by building a school where children from the village could learn without walking miles on empty stomachs. Classrooms were modest, yet filled with laughter, curiosity, and hope. Teachers were carefully chosen not for their qualifications alone, but for their ability to inspire and care for the children as if each one were their own. They installed clean water systems that allowed families to drink safely and cook without worry. They provided farming tools and seeds, giving young farmers the means to grow crops and support their families. Slowly, the village began to thrive, not because of one man's money, but because of shared purpose and the values that Emeka and Chioma had lived by. Chioma and Emeka themselves became a symbol, an emblem of love, patience, and courage. Villagers who had once whispered doubts and judgments now looked on with respect and admiration. They saw not just wealth but integrity, not just status but humility, not just comfort but hearts willing to endure trials for the sake of love. Chioma often stood at the edge of the fields, watching Emeka walk among the workers. His hands were still calloused, his clothes simple, but his eyes shone with quiet strength. She smiled to herself, remembering the days when the world doubted them, when whispers seemed to follow her every step. Those days felt distant now, like a storm that had passed, leaving the sky clearer, the air lighter, and the heart stronger. She had chosen love over ease, patience over pride, and faith over fear. And in doing so, she had found more than happiness. She had found a life worth living, built with a man whose heart had matched her own in courage and depth. Even the children in the village seemed to sense it. They would run to the couple with questions, laughter, and stories. They did not care about titles or money. They cared about the warmth of hands that guided them, the kindness in eyes that watched over them, and the love that had changed the very fabric of their home. As years passed, Chioma and Emeka's love did not fade. It flourished. They faced challenges, of course: droughts, illness, and the occasional skepticism from outsiders. But each time they faced them together, their bond growing stronger with each trial, their respect for each other deepening with every shared decision. Chioma often reflected on their journey, the doubts, the whispers, the hardships, and she realized how far they had come. She remembered the choice she had made under that mango tree, the vows exchanged with hope and trust, and the quiet courage that had carried them through every storm. Emeka, the man who had seemed so simple at first glance, was everything she had hoped for and more. His humility, wisdom, patience, and love had transformed not just their lives, but the lives of everyone around them. Their love, simple yet extraordinary, had changed destinies. Not through wealth, not through power, but through the unwavering courage to choose each other, to trust in each other, and to live a life guided by integrity, compassion, and heart. And in the quiet of the evenings, beneath the same mango tree that had witnessed their vows so many years ago, Chioma and Emeka would sit hand in hand, smiling at the world they had built together. A world that proved the greatest treasures are never measured in coins, but in hearts that dare to love against the odds. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video. Subscribe to this channel so you won't miss our next interesting story filled with love, lessons, and unforgettable moments. Until our next story,